My name is Emmi Turkki. I come from Finland and I work at the WSP office in Helsinki, which is the capital city of Finland. I have a Master of Science degree in Urban Studies and Planning, and I work in the Landscape Architecture unit. In our unit, we have 22 professionals coming from various backgrounds and degrees, and I work here as an environmental specialist. Overall, WSP Finland has 3 units that work with landscape design related projects, 2 landscape architecture units where we do design projects in varying scales. In our work, we really need to focus on the challenging climate conditions and seasonal changes due to our geographical location. The 3rd unit is a resilient landscape. This unit tackles in their projects challenges such as biodiversity loss and climate change adaptation. Together, we create innovative, responsible, and sustainable solutions to our clients. Our work is really multidisciplinary, so we do cooperation also with other WSP Finland units on an everyday basis. We've also launched some cooperation with the WSP Nordics. Today, I'm here to talk you about environmental aesthetics as a new perspective on the value debate of green infrastructure projects. The presentation will focus on urban meadows, but similar concepts and ideas can be used in any type of green infrastructure project. Here you can see the agenda for the presentation. First, I will go through why is this topic relevant. I've done a study on aesthetic appreciation of urban meadows, so I'll go through the key findings as well as key challenges in the presentation. Then I'll move on going through how does this topic relate to practice and into our everyday projects. Lastly, I'll go through the key takeaways and then we will have time for the questions. So, why is environmental aesthetics a valuable viewpoint when discussing urban issues? Looking at the big picture, biodiversity loss has been identified as one of the most pressing environmental challenges today. As a response to this, here in Europe, the EU and also Finnish national environmental authorities have assigned cities to fight biodiversity loss with different means. In Finland, cities have started implementing urban greening plans of different scales and levels, one of them being increasing number of meadow habitats in urban areas. Unlike in many Central European cities, urban meadows is a fairly new phenomenon in Finland. The visual change from controlled lawns and plantings to the ever-changing meadows has caused some backlash in the national media, both among citizens and professionals. We've also heard from our customers that the residents' reception to the meadows that have brought into urban areas has not always been positive. These are really the reasons why I got interested in this topic. So I did a research on what type of aesthetic appreciation do urban meadows receive within professional ridings. I studied several meadow operational programs done to Finnish cities. What I was able to find out was that meadows tend to be divided into 2 categories, historical meadows and newcomer meadows. The historical meadows are connected to agricultural history of which they originate from, and thus they are given cultural value. Due to the open and dry growing conditions, species that are nowadays endangered thrive on these old meadows, and they are high in biodiversity. On the other hand, the newcomer meadows are developed from lawns or even started from scratch. These meadows are connected to recreation, meaning that people are encouraged to play or have a picnic on the meadows. While meadows are developed to improve the quality of cities' green structure, for lay people, the ecological benefits are not always self-evident. So cities see that it's important to communicate about the ecological benefits that these newcomer meadows provide. So what type of challenges do we then have ahead when considering my key findings and this kind of categorization? Over decades, people have gotten used to urban areas looking as they do, neat, controlled, but at the same time, cities need to improve the ecological quality of urban areas. This brings us the controversy of bringing nature back to cities versus the intense control over urban areas. Meadows that have cultural value are often situated at the less built parts of the city, maybe in cultural landscapes. So it is really the newcomer meadows that we are bringing into the urban areas. This kind of transition is ongoing and possible, but while cities are on this journey, I find it to be challenging that the conception of environmental aesthetics is fairly narrow. Firstly, aesthetics is often only connected to individual preferences. What do people see as beautiful? And secondly, aesthetics is seen to be equal to visual beauty. For example, a flowering meadow, like here in the lower picture, is seen to be beautiful by many people. But do then these kind of messy looking meadows, like here in the upper photo, have any aesthetic value? I think there is a lack of vocabulary when we are expressing the aesthetic value of meadows. In the previous slide, I was telling about the historical meadows connected to cultural history, meaning that when people encounter meadows in a historical setting, they get the feeling of cultural history. That is, for example, an aesthetic value that is not tied to individual preferences nor visual beauty, but it is not recognized as an aesthetic value, and no such value can be given to the messy meadows. If us, the professionals, are not able to recognize the aesthetic value of non-flowering meadows, how could then the people that have no training ecology do either? Cities tend to focus on telling about the ecological benefits of meadows, and that is one way to affect the aesthetic appreciation of meadows. But we should consider that not everyone are interested in ecological aspects, and they rather focus on the immediate feelings and reactions that they get being in the environment. In my desk, I have many projects where we are bringing meadows into urban areas. I'll give you now an example of one such case, and I'll also go through how we tackled some of these challenges that I was presenting before. Keep in mind that all of these ideas can also be applied to other types of green infrastructure projects. The case that I'm presenting is located in Helsinki. It is an inland island called Kuninkaansaari. Here you can see the map of the area. The island is located between two rapids. One of the rapids has a fishway and one part is protected. The case area as a whole is where the city of Helsinki was originally established to. So the island and its surroundings are part of built cultural environments of national significance. The built history on the island reaches back to the 16th century, and it has rich history including agricultural activities. There's been a water power plant. Nowadays, there is a museum of technology on the island. Our customer in this project was City of Helsinki. The planning area is about 2.5 hectares, including the southern side of the island starting from this bridge. We started the project about 2 years ago, and we've had 9 key professionals with us in the project, including landscape architects, environmental specialists, geo, water, and structural engineers. In addition, there's also been other assisting designers in the project. Nowadays, the island is a popular recreational site. Here you can see some photos looking to the island and from the island. People really come here to admire the waterfall created by the dam, which you can see here on the right side. And also they come to admire the amazing views opening from the island. And people really like to come do fishing here. What our customer wanted from us was really to bring forward the ecological potential of the vegetation on the island while updating the design. We started the project by mapping out the existing vegetation on the island, including the inventory of different vegetation types and species, as well as invasive species. Already looking into the design project, we mapped out which plants and vegetation types should be saved, restored, removed, or developed in the design. Moving on to the master plan, we laid out the basic idea of the design and did user participation so that people could see our design and give comments. This project presents a case where lawns in a popular recreational site are transformed into meadows. So moving on to the detailed plan, we included working instructions on how the meadows will be developed. Here you can again see photos from the island focusing on the vegetation. The northern side of the island, which you can see in the left side photos. The vegetation here is this charming old garden type feeling to it, and we really wanted to preserve it that way. Also the edges, which you can see here in the middle. The meadows here had ecological value, so we wanted to keep them as they are. Instead, the southern side, which is on the right side photos, presents no significant ecological values or scenic character at the moment. The lower parts, here in the right below photo, is actually filled with leftover land, and the lawns are in a really poor state. They've become feeding places to geese, which further impoverish the ecological conditions of the lawn habitat. Overall, the lawns at the moment are low in biodiversity and have poor ecological quality. So to improve the quality of the green structure on the island, we really wanted to focus on the lawn habitats. Here at the upper parts of the island, the lawns will be turned into meadows through maintenance. And on the lower parts, which is this part of the island, only patches will be assigned to be meadows and rest is left at lawns. Even if we now decide that we won't cut the grass in the future, we won't immediately achieve flowering meadows. We might actually never achieve this because there's only few species growing on the existing lawns, and changing growing conditions into something that the flowering meadow species require needs intense care, and this is something that the city is not able to provide. So the transition from this short, controlled, even if ecologically poor, turned into messy looking meadows might not make sense to everyone. That is why we really wanted to leave some parts of the lawn as they are, just by enhancing the growing conditions. And here at the upper parts, we created patches that will get new growing medium and seeds of flowering meadow species such as daisies. Whether the patches will remain as designed isn't really relevant to the design. The idea was just to get something easily flowering in the beginning of the transition while people are still kind of getting used to the meadows and the meadows are developing potential. Even when we are able to improve the ecological conditions and create higher biodiversity, these are not really things that people easily perceive. It is really the tangible manifestation that people are able to sense. That's why the aesthetic value in any given green infrastructure project is an important perspective, but not only to the users, but people who execute our design. In a project where maintenance is a key in the success of the design, a maintenance plan is a must. Since many things are easier to explain graphically, we decided to create thematic maps alongside the traditional textual maintenance plan. The maps were created in AutoCAD and Illustrator, so they are easily transferred into GIS programs if the client so needed. Firstly, we wanted to give an idea of the various moods on the island that the vegetation creates. So we created a map of the different scenic landscapes and landscape structures, which you can see here in the upper picture. In this way, the maintenance group is able to interpret our design. We are not just telling what to do with the vegetation, but what is really the aim. There's already existing valuable meadows at the edges of the island and new ones to be developed, so it was important to separate the maintenance practices in the future. In addition, we also considered where can we get and use recycled soil on the site and where we could locate dead wood on the island. After the presentation of the case study, I still want to highlight key takeaways to keep in mind in future green infrastructure projects. First and foremost, I want to emphasize that ecology and aesthetics are not mutually exclusive. We just need to recognize the aesthetic value of meadows. In a design project, remember to make the human influence be seen in the design. This tells about ownership over the area, and that makes the design more easily to get acceptance. To express both the ecological and aesthetic goals, utilize different types of tools, especially visual ones, like we did with the thematic maps, to really transfer and clarify the ideas that are not always visible in a design or a technical drawing. Similarly, as we are communicating the ecological benefits of meadows to users using information boards and signs, we should also tell about the aesthetic values that the meadows create. What can people not only see, but smell, hear, feel in the environment, and really focus on what type of response does the wildness of the meadows evoke in people when they are in these environments. These are my advice on how we make aesthetically conventional designs more accepted among crowds. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Amy, for a fantastic presentation. Really, really interesting. So before moving into the Q&A period, I would like to remind attendees to enter your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar platform. And also you can download the PDF version of this presentation from the handout box on the dashboard. Amy, if you can open your webcam, it would be really nice to see you.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you. The first question that we have is about nature's messiness and public perception. So the question goes like this. What has been the most challenging conversation from the public on nature's messiness, and how did you deal with this?
Yeah, actually, in one of our clients told that they've done this kind of meadow operational programs, and they started to executing it by turning lawns into meadows, and they really didn't get a positive feedback. So it actually, they ended up like bringing the meadows back into lawns, so they needed to come back in the maintenance practices. So what we're trying to now kind of emphasize is the user participation in the project when they are introducing the new maintenance practices to the before lawn, future meadow areas. Yeah, and also really to kind of bring forward the ecological and aesthetic values that the meadows provide. We've also, I read in the local newspapers that in one city, people really felt that the meadows are kind of like putting down the value of the city, and it's, yeah, really caused some worry in the people.
Thank you. Can you give us an example of other types of green infrastructure projects where you think the aesthetics perspective is especially important?
Yeah. So I think especially projects that deal with stormwater management, especially like vegetated ones, because they are like really changing with how much is raining, if there's dry periods. So even if we try and design a really nice looking kind of flowering meadow, or if we have an idea of a that what would the water management basin, for example, look like, we might not always come up with the result that we thought of. So I think these are really tricky projects, and here I think it's good to accept the fact that the aesthetic look that we expect is not always maybe something that we end up getting.
Thank you. Do you know if meadows are appreciated for lower maintenance requirements in Finland?
Yeah, I think it really depends on people. Some people understand the ecological benefits of meadows, so um, they are actually being requested as well. So it's not all negative. So yeah, I think they are also appreciated, the low maintenance.
Thank you. How do you think we can best combine aesthetics and ecology in design?
I think to kind of tell in the design that what is purposeful or what is done in purpose, to kind of give hints that this is supposed to look like this. It's not just random, or it's not unfinished. I think with meadows, people often get the feeling that something is unfinished in the area. This actually brings me. I in one place I saw this traffic circle that kind of was left just, there were rocks in it and gravel, and I was going past it many times and thinking like, oh, like why didn't they finish this area? And then somebody told me that, hey, actually they are just testing. They didn't want to really do anything with the traffic circle and just see what the kind of nature does by itself. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like yeah, so just kind of like giving a hint that we did this on purpose. It's not like unfinished or.
Thank you. Next question is like this, less money is being given to maintenance of public areas. What kind of aesthetic and ecological potential do you think that gives us?
That is really topical in Finland, because yeah, really cities are cutting down the costs of maintenance. But I think we should really see that as a like a potential to really increase the ecology in cities. And in Finland, we've the dynamic plantings have become really popular, and this is kind of the result of like cutting down maintenance costs and also enhancing nature's own work in the design. So yeah, I think it really does provide us potential both aesthetically and ecologically. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is about informational board that you put in parks. What is the aesthetic value that you would give to grassy meadows if written on an informational board?
Yeah, I mentioned in the key takeaways that I would really focus on the kind of, people tend to like only focus on the kind of visual thing, what can they see, but rather on the all the senses, and I think these messy meadows are seen to be kind of wild looking. So what can this wildness kind of provide to people? The kind of feeling of maybe being surprised, or because aesthetics is not only about beautiful things, it can also be about unexpected things. So really to think it from that point of view, like what can the kind of wildness in a city provide to people, and also maybe in comparison to a lawn environment or like habitats, meadows have, at least in my opinion, much more to provide for the different senses, to what you can hear and smell and things like that. So yeah, also bring forward to the kind of richness and intensity of the experience when being in a meadow environment.
Thank you. I will take the last question. This is a question from the UK about multicultural society with different attitudes to landscape. The question goes like this: in the UK, in UK cities, we have a more multicultural society with different attitudes to different types of landscape. We need to take this additional factor in account. Do you have any further suggestions on how to manage this additional issue?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I think it's actually interesting that urban areas, even if we go kind of in a different parts of the world, they are kind of becoming to look more similar to each other. Of course, we have different climates, different seasons. So, but the idea of the urban areas is kind of similar. But yeah, this is an interesting point of view. I think especially this kind of communication and participation of people would be helpful in this kind of viewpoint, to really get people understand the kind of ecological and aesthetic potential that meadows, for example, provide. I would give that as a, yeah.
Thank you for this great presentation. We're at the end of our webinar session. We just received a few more questions, so apologies. These will be answered shortly by email. So please feel free to follow up directly with Emmy via the contact details shown on the screen. And I would like to thank all attendees for joining today. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you, Emmy, for this great presentation.
Thank you.